Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Marchuk. Welcome to the Transform Now podcast. On this episode, our guest is Suriel Arellano. Suriel is an expert in digital transformation, helping leaders innovate processes, culture, and customer experiences through best practices in leadership development and digital technologies. With over 20 years of experience in relationships with top-tier firms like IBM and HP, Suriel believes strongly in his proven methods for navigating organizational structure and resolving systemic cultural challenges to build teams that leverage digital technologies. Today, we'll be talking with Suriel about his book, Leading in the Age of AI, a guide for digital leaders to empower and inspire their organization while driving business transformation. Actually, I like that second part, that tagline of it is actually really good because you're actually looking at digital leaders empowering their people. So I really appreciate that. Welcome, Suriel.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for having me here. And just so excited for a talk.
I'm glad you are here. So the bio gives only so much information. Tell us how we got to this point. I mean, you're an author, a speaker. You've done a bunch of work in the past with large organizations. Give us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I always like to start with is I consider myself a geek. So I started with an engineering in electronic engineering. But I ended up with a bachelor's of science in leadership and management from NYU. And the reason why this happened, it was that while I was doing technical stuff, I saw that there was a need for people to understand technology. And that's where what everything started, is like, how can I translate technology in a way that is in plain English for anyone listening to me? So that's when I finished my Bachelor's of Science in Leadership and Management. And then from there, I continued doing coaching, more on the leadership part, management. And because I've been a geek all my time, I like technology. And as we move forward now, and probably three years ago, with all these boom about AI, that is not new, but it's new for a lot of people, is in the mainstream. Now is like, how can you explain in plain English what AI is and why AI is not? Because a lot of people have different definitions of what AI is, depending on how you see your future, dystopian, utopian. I grew up in the 80s, and part of probably you saw it in my book that I was telling my personal life is like, I grew up in the 80s where we watched Terminator, all these movies that machines are taking over the world. So I am on the technology side, and in the sense of like, I love all these gadgets, but I would say I'm on the people side as well, because that's where we need to make sure that the right information gets across of what AI is and what can it do for you as a leader and your organization. Hopefully that helps in terms of where I'm coming from after all these years and why I'm doing this.
It does. So, with your experience working with other organizations, you talked about this in the book, but I want to hear how you describe this when you encounter these misconceptions about what AI is among leaders. How can you address those misconceptions in a way that leaders within these organizations can really grasp what it means?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and as I said, a lot of depending on the cultural background and even your beliefs, there's a lot of conceptions that might be misconceptions about what AI is. In the sense that, like me, I grew up watching Terminator, and, to make it more for those younger executives, I don't know, iRobot, which now Elon Musk is trying to bring probably iRobot. Sometimes we feel like I always get two type of people, executives that I work with. I get the ones that they love technology like me, and they just want to implement it. They don't see any repercussions of implementing it. They just go right away. I have the other ones that are fearful. They don't know if they do know that if they don't apply AI, they probably going to be obsolete and they're not going to be moving forward. So for me, the major misconception of AI is that AI is a person that is taking over the world, right? Or this misconception that is a system so close to a person that is gonna take over the world. And what I always say is, in plain English, like I like to do, is like, AI is just a software, right? AI is just a software that, of course, it has different algorithms. Like we talk about is like, oh, the algorithm is learning. Is a software with algorithms that can, yes, it recreate some of the patterns of a human brain in terms of the learning. But at the end, this software is going to be only doing what it was trained for. And that's the difference when we say, oh, yes, it's because they're creating an AI that is going and taking over and all that. Yeah, but who created that AI? There was a design specific to train the AI what it was capable or it was created for. So getting this misconception mostly with leaders as well, because I have the leaders that some of the clients, executives that I work with is like, oh, are they going to replace all my people? Or are they going to replace me as a leader? So I go to the basics. AI is just a software. If we take that from there, yeah, that is capable of doing so many things, that it can become very powerful. All these things, yes, are real, but it goes back to the core of like, it's a software that someone created at train. So from there, yes, we can, it is like an onion. We can start peeling some of those layers.
That makes sense. So when you start talking about that, you identified in those two types of leaders, some sort of emotional gut reaction. Either there's excitement or fear related to the implementing of any kind of AI technology. So what role do you believe emotional intelligence plays in a leader's ability to effectively implement AI solutions within their organization?
Absolutely. I think, and I get to work with people that are integrating AI and also work with people that are creating a type of AI technology. So for me is, as leader, you need to have, if out of everything that you have, empathy is the most crucial EQ or emotional intelligence component when you're creating or integrating AI. Why? Because people are afraid of AI in the sense of like, am I going to lose control? Am I going to be replaced? So as leader in your organization, if you have the component, the elements of a leadership trait in emotional, empathetical, of course, moral, and most important nowadays that we talk about all these systemic bias, right? Is making sure that when you create or integrate a type of AI, you take this parameters to make sure that it's human, is the human element is the most important. So that's the part that I would say for leaders, it is important for them to have this empathy to their organizations or the people in their organizations.
Yeah, and that part about the people, I think, is probably the most important, because you bring up a good point, which is the people who are being impacted by this could feel the same emotions in a different way, whereas a leader may be very excited about the potential transformation of their business. The people impacted by that transformation may not have the same level of excitement. So how does a leader build a culture to accept or to be as excited as they are about the potential changes to their business?
Yeah, the approach that we take is a little bit different from the norm, I would say. And I think this is the part of what makes us unique in our approach. I'm not saying that we're the only ones that take this approach, but in my first book, actually before the Leading in the Age of AI, it's called the Golden Triangle, the pinnacle for digital transformation. And I talk about this framework that was created back, I'm not remember if it was the 50s, 60s, but is the people process technology framework. And that's why it's called the golden triangle, because it has the people, the process, technology. When we talk about a digital first approach, sometimes, and this is the part where you're mentioning, we have executives or leaders that go for the technology first, right? They go for, I'm excited about technology. I need to bring this technology into my organization. So more often than not, they come and bring the technology. They bring the technology, they try to recreate the processes, but people are an afterthought. And this is where McKinsey says 70% of digital transformations fail, because there's the resistance in people. That's the true definition, because they started with technology, they were so excited to bring it, they recreate those processes, and then people are quitting. So our approach is different. We are not digital or considered digital first. We are people first approach. And one of the quotes in my book, and I like to say every time, is technology needs to empower humanity, not replace it. Coming from that approach, whereas people first approach, and the companies that we work with, I can give many examples, but try to make it short, is when we start with people, looking at the people component, meaning looking at the skill sets. What are the things that we need to improve in the people? Then look at the processes. Don't bring automation or AI just from the sake of bringing AI, but look at those processes that really need to be revamped, optimized, and then look at the technology that will suffice those needs. When we in this process, one of the things that we like, and we're agnostic to software. We are not, although I've been in the side of the vendor where the agenda is to sell the software, we are agnostic to the software. So we have this freedom of actually provide with the client's best benefit, is that we're going to look at your people. We're going to and there are so many frameworks that we use to working with people. And then from there, we're going to look at the processes. And finally, we're going to give you as a deliverable a list of things that you need to look in a software. So I think that's the approach that we use, and have been really instrumental with that digital transformations in organizations.
So the people part of it, getting back to that, when you start building out any kind of program, you're going to have folks who are going to be for it, maybe some who may be a little hesitant or resistant. What are some, I guess, fun and creative ways that leaders can recognize employees who are helping to promote or embracing AI and automation, so they feel like they've won an Oscar instead of just a participation trophy?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because we have an approach. It's I wouldn't say it's a little bit like gamification. It's not like too much fun, but I think it encourages that aspect of, oh, am I part of the part in this gamification? So when we start working with a client, we want to see where they are. We want to see if they're ready to implement AI. That's our first approach. So we do have a framework, a report that we create. It's a survey that we send to at least the initial people, the top leadership that we're going to implement a digital transformation strategy. So in that part is from 0 to 5, depending on where they are, is 3 is the threshold. So if they're above the threshold, then they're ready. And then we start working with them, and we start in a strategy. If they're below 3, that's where it needs work. They need to be ready. They're either some of the leadership team are against, or they're misinformed, or they don't know what it is. So that's the part where I say we start doing some stuff within the company that is a little bit fun in the terms of like, well, we all need to be in 3. We need to be above 3. What do we need? And we do it at different levels of the company, which I'm going to mention in a bit with the new book. But is the part where all the people are in the company are involved. So if you are, is not like a hard certification, but if you are above 3 and you help your company to be above 3, that is the ultimate goal for the company, because they're ready, and not only ready for AI, but they're consider themselves, they can consider themselves a nimble organization, an innovative organization, ready for that next step. So that's a little bit. And of course, what other things I could recommend is just making sure that you take from the top leader, in this case, the CEO, all the way to the person at the bottom that has, creates the reports. Everybody needs to be on board. And I think that creates also that culture of innovation within the organization.
So you mentioned going across the organization, and this is something that I've seen quite a bit, and I'm sure you've seen it even more than I have. There may be pockets where these innovative groups who can really attach to a specific technology, a specific new way of operating, and are more eager or more advanced in the way that they move towards that to help build out that, in your case, your score, to say, yeah, we're ready for this, but we're also moving forward with it. How can you take a leadership position where not all parts of the organization are as eager to move this forward? If they either are more hesitant because they don't have the skills to do it, they're more hesitant because perhaps they got burned in the past, collaborating with other parts of the organization, which can often be fairly challenging for leaders. How do you get past that to help encourage those leaders, but also help encourage that adoption across the organization?
Absolutely. So there is a part of our process that I actually got it from MIT while studying AI leadership. And I think it's fascinating because we use it as part of our process. And this is the part, it's called X Teams. And for someone that is listening on video, they can just Google X Teams, and is proprietary from MIT, but just mentioning, I think that's the part of the core of making a digital transformation or a company nimble, more agile to innovation. And what I like about X Teams is that usually the digital transformation in an organization comes from the top, then to either the CIO or the CXO or someone, and then from there to the IT department, or yes, because they need finance. Sometimes they bring someone to it from finance. So it is kind of becoming just like its own circle. What X Teams provide, and this is what we do with companies, is we basically go across the company, and even for those departments that have nothing to do with the digital transformation project, we bring them as we call them influencers. Why? Because even bringing outside perspectives, and this is what X Teams does, the X mean external. So is basically people that are not, they can have stake in the project, they might not. But bringing all these perspectives within the organization, bringing influencers, they are gonna help pretty much bring the whole organization in. And I'm not saying that the whole organization are gonna be the ones looking for the software that they need to bring. No. But what you said is like sometimes those pockets, those silos are what McKinsey says 70% of digital transformations fail, because is when we're dealing with people mostly. And we had a couple of circumstances where one of the users at the director level, his team was going to use the software. He wasn't part of those meetings because they were too technical, right? He wasn't part of those meetings. But then when the deployment of that software, he was basically the one that have a hard stop. So that really it slowed down the deployment of that software, because he definitely said, is like, hey, you never asked me what you needed from me. So it's going to be hard. Now I have to train my people, my team, all that stuff. So what this approach does, the X Teams, is that even if you have a minimum influence within the software, you are a part of that X team. You're part of that influence. So if that's the best approach that I would say is for a cross organization, that it will help any project, regardless if it's digital transformation is, and there's so many change management processes that we also put in place, like the AdCar ProSci. I'm not licensed, so maybe I shouldn't be mentioning it, but it is go through the flow, right? It's like making everybody aware of that, and then is going from there. I'm not licensed, so I'm not sure if I'm allowed to speak to it, but it is one of the things that we use. Yeah,
that makes sense. All right, you again, getting people involved across the organization to help, not even from a communication standpoint, but from an external perspective, can really support adoption across the organization, as well as just awareness for parts of the organization which may not be impacted now, but could be impacted further down the road. They know how that might impact them and may have additional insights into what that might look like for them. So as we start looking at broadly, organizations generally don't change immediately. They have legacy systems. You've got legacy people, legacy processes. If you take that triangle again, some parts of those have been old and established, right? And they're there for a good reason, because they've been running the business for a really long time. So looking at new technologies and training people on new ways of working and updating your processes, what strategies can leaders use to keep their organizational structure agile and responsive, so it doesn't look like a dinosaur trying to do the cha-cha?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because we're actually going through, there are a couple of clients that it's kind of textbook of what you're saying. But I think that the most important to keep that it goes back in the culture of the company, right? Is going back to the people component, and part of the book that I'm writing is called Culture Shift, because sometimes we have to shift to that culture. And some old school, mostly companies that have been already in the market for 30, 40, 50 years, they have a lot of the people that started within the company have a lot of stake or saying in that. So sometimes it is difficult to get that nimble or that agile part in these companies. So culture is one, is the culture of the company. Second is the skill set of the people. I always gonna go for the people. If people are not trained and up to date on skills, all that, is going to be difficult, because all they know, mostly they're working the company for 20, 25 years. All they know is what they know inside the company. They haven't been open or they haven't seen outside how throughout the years everything has changed. So again, it goes back, culture, people. And then before technology, this is the most important thing. I've got some executives that they're fearful of just bringing AI because they don't trust it. They don't know what it is. They have they need to know what AI, in this case AI or any other technology, is gonna do for them, but they're not open to share information about their company right away, which we're mitigating a little bit of that. So going through those three things: culture, the people, skill set, and then the technology, kind of a little bit of the golden triangle. Is in culture, we believe in an infrastructure, or we created a framework that is the culture shifters. That's your top level leadership team. Then you have the culture changers, which are the management team. They are we call them the agents of change, because they're the ones that are going to bring down the vision. And then you have the culture bearers. The ones that bear that culture are the organization, the rest of the people. If those three things are not in orchestration, and meaning knowing what the culture is, then the next one, you're not going to be able to do it, because it requires people. It requires, like I said, the 25-year employee that's been there doing the same thing over and over needs to make sure that is part of that new culture. We're moving, we're nimble, we're innovative, we're going to do that. Once we have those two, then we say, remember the assessment, the readiness assessment, right? If they're under 3, we can now go to the next part. But if they're over 3, is perfect. Let's create a POC, a proof of concept. Let's have a prototype where we're going to test out what you need. That way is going to give you a little bit more flexibility in, like, you're not bringing a ton of money investment in something that, again, you need to test, right? If our processes, you bring in AI to replace those processes or optimize those processes, well, let's not bring a software just yet. Let's do a proof of concept or prototype. We are, maybe it's too soon for me to say this, our team is developing what we call the DX Sim, is, as it says, as a digital transformation simulator with AI, where people can bring their data or the processes into our sim, and we can simulate that strategy. I know a couple of competitors, they're trying to do that, so we're kind of getting into that as well. But I think besides the sim, my best tip, if I may, is don't come and buy the software immediately. Do those 3 things. Check your culture, check the people, the asset, the main equity that you have in your company, which is your people, their skill sets. And then take a look at the technology. Start with something minimal, just a prototype or proof of concept, and then from there, MVP, so on and so forth. So hopefully that helps. I know it was a big answer, but it's just methodical. We do it in a way that is bringing the core, which is the people, right? You want to bring the people together.
Yeah, without readiness, you're right. No matter what the technology is, if your people aren't ready for it and your organization isn't ready to adopt it, even if it is the most transformational technology you can imagine, it may fall flat because the organization itself doesn't have that culture of adoption, is not ready yet from a training perspective, and the folks that are there may be resistant because they don't understand. So taking that leadership approach to really help develop that culture and the people, to allow them to see this, any kind of technology, any kind of trait change that's coming along, as something that they can buy into for the betterment of themselves, but also of the organization that's paying them too. So that's a good thing.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Before we close up, you mentioned a couple times, maybe you can give us a preview. What's coming up in your new book?
So culture shift, as I say, is the framework for creating or putting together a culture revamp, if you may. Shift, actually, we are finishing with the touches of the acronym SHIFT. I'm not going to say them just yet, but it has to do a lot. And it's a framework, just like I said, the culture shifters, the culture changers, and then the culture bearers. So it has a lot to do. We are actually creating a program out of this book, because we've seen with a couple of clients that digital transformation is kind of like a set goal for them, but and I sometimes I do it with my coaches and say, vision is without a plan is just a dream, right? So sometimes a lot of the C-level executives, we have this vision, but we don't know how to go about it. But if the company's not ready for that, which literally is the culture, then everything is going to not fall apart, but it's going to be really hard to work with the people component. So as part of this program and as part of this book, the idea of the culture shift is to really change. And this is going to be different from the AI leadership, which the AI leadership is more like a guide, is more like something that leaders can read and learn about what AI is. The culture shift book is going to have a little more practical things. What companies can do to revamp their culture, in the sense of like, when I was invited to speak at this event where the book actually came from, because it was an HR conference, and I was like, well, I don't know how I can add to an HR some of this digital transformation. And something that it was kind of like the center of that conference is that a lot of times when there's new technologies in companies, HR and learning and development, those are the groups that get with the mess, with cleaning up the mess. Why? Because like I said, there's a new technology, processes are reinvented or kind of recreated, and people are an afterthought. So who are the ones that need to train the people, need to kind of get those people to on board with the new technology? Is HR, and more often than not, learning and development. So that's when kind of click in me is like, well, we need to get that whatever is in the posters and the walls in HR, get them into the people, right? But that has to come from the top. So I know I'm kind of numbling into the answer because it's not out there yet, but eventually the idea of the book is going to be more practical, executives, and this book actually is going to have a part for HR people, mostly HR and learning and development executives that have been part of those PTSDs of like, oh, they brought the technology, but now we're the ones training. So this is because it's across the company, not only the tech side of it, not only the executive side of it, but also the training side of it. So culture shift is going to bring a little bit more practical things so the company can actually be involved. Like I said, those three parts, the culture change shifters, culture changers, and culture bearers, they all have something to do with this. So hopefully by then, early next year, we're going to have the curriculum, and we're going to have everything. That's going to be a program completely isolated with the consulting part. So hopefully by then we have the new book.
Well, looking forward to that. Well, Suriel, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your insights on this whole new era of AI that we really have to train our people to be able to adopt in the right way. And it's up to our leaders to create that culture change. So thank you for leading us through that. I really appreciate it.
All righty. Thank you, Michael, for having me.